Okay, to create the drill press vise assembly, I'm going to use a different type of assembly for a demonstration purpose, okay? So in my case, I'm going to go and open a file, but once you get to the drill press vise assembly, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the new, and you're going to create a new, for the drill press vise specifically, it's in English units or inches. So you'll be going to English, and then you'll be starting a standard inch IAM, which is an inventor assembly, okay? So that's what you would do to start the drill press vise. Now, for this video in particular, I'm going to use one that's already been started. So I'm going to go ahead and open. And when you go to open, you're going to go over to your class share. And then on the first year, architecture. And week 15, inventor assembly, I put a folder in there called pump assembly demo. I'm going to double click in there. And you're going to open the pump assembly IAM file. That's one that's already been started. Okay, so you just hit open. So this is the pump assembly demonstration that I'm going to be using for this video. And just you're going to be using some of those other files here in a couple of minutes. Now, as far as the assembly, what it is first of all, look at the ribbon. It's a little bit different. We have the place component, create components, joint, constraint, and all some other ones here. And then on the project browser, we notice that we have these parts, and these are all the individual parts that up to now have been assembled already. So we're going to add a few more right now as part of this demonstration to help you with the drill press vise. But nonetheless, this is the assemblies or the parts that have been assembled already up to now, and you can kind of hover over them, and you notice that it highlights which one is which. Okay. Now you notice the pump cylinder head. I can actually grab it and move it around, but I cannot do that to the rest of this. Okay. The reason for that, if you notice over here on the pump cylinder, it's got a little push pin. That little push pin is telling us that it's grounded, and when it's grounded, it's not moving, and that's usually what we have to do. We have to usually ground at least one part in the assembly. Okay, so that's why this one can't move. As a matter of fact, anything that's been assembled with this part was, as a matter of fact, the pump cylinder, and you notice that's the one that has the push pin, cannot move. So if you look under pump cylinder, when you right click on the pump cylinder, right now it's showing grounded. So I'm going to take that off on purpose just to show you that if I unground it, then I can actually move the part around. Actually, any of it, I can grab and move it around. Okay, which is it depends on your assembly, but I will tell you in most assemblies, including the drill press vise, you do need to at least pin or ground one of the parts. I'll let you decide which one that's going to be. So this one, I'm going to go ahead and put it back as grounded. Right click, grounded for the pump cylinder right in here. Okay. All right. So then the next thing we're going to do is you're going to have to do this, but just so you can kind of see through this part a little bit, I'm going to change the appearance of the pump cylinder. I'm going to select the pump cylinder. And as far as the material, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's a cast steel. But just so I can be able to see through it, and once again, you're going to have to do this. It's just that I want to be able to show you all the different components. I'm going to select the this part right in here, the pump cylinder. And I'm going to change it from an appearance of slate blue. I'm going to change that over to polycarbonate smoked. Once again, you don't have to do this. I'm just doing it on this video. And polycarbonate smoked, what it is just plastic, and it's specifically clear plastic. And I did that so you can kind of see right through the pump cylinder. So you can see all the parts that have been um, constrained or assembled, okay? You can do that if you want to. Just make sure you put it back on the right appearance. But again, it's just an appearance. It won't change the physical properties of the part. But I just made it look like clear plastic so we can kind of see through it and just see what exactly is going on. Okay. Now I'm moving everything around to go back to my home view. I can click on the little home key over here, or you can click F6 on your keyboard and it'll take you back to our home key or to our home view, just like if I click here. That's F6. Okay. So then I'm going to start assembly now. And what I'm going to start to assemble first is I'm going to assemble the pump cylinder is what I'm going to do. And the way I'm going to do it is I want this pump cylinder to be placed right on top of here together with some other components. Matter of fact, I guess what I'll do is I'll bring in the other components first. It doesn't really matter which order this happens, but I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of bring in the other parts that I'm going to assemble next. I could have assembled this first, but either way, just however order you do it, it's just really just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and click on place, and I'm going to place the other components that I need for this one assembly in particular. Okay. So the parts that I need is I'm going to go ahead and place, and I'm going to go to that same folder that we were working with right now under the week 15 pump assembly demo. And I need the pump spring is one of them, and I'm going to hit open. I'm going to select it and hit open, and then I'm going to place one instance of the pump spring. Click. Okay. If I don't hit escape, I can actually place more instances of that pump spring. How many? Actually, as many as you want. I only need one, but I'm just going to show you that you can actually place as many components as you need of that one pump spring, and it'll just make, I go renumber each one individually. I don't need that many, so I'm just going to select and delete these guys. If I hit escape. So that one there, and then I'm going to need the pump washer B and pump nut A. So I'm going to go place pump washer B, that guy right there, open, place it, and then I'm going to go place pump nut A, that one right there, and open. And there we go. Okay. So these are all the different components I'm going to place, and eventually the pump spring is going to be right here in the middle, and then this washer is going to go here, and it's going to be tied down with that nut, and then eventually the pump cylinder head is going to go on top of here. Okay. Now, again, in assembling, you can notice it looks like I'm going to place it in the right location, but usually it's not going to be exact, okay? So we're going to be using the Inventor software to place it in the right location. So I'm going to move this back over here. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use the constraint command right in here. So I'm going to click constraint. And I will tell you, most of the time it's a combination of different constraints that we have to apply to get this to be in the right place, okay? So the first constraint I'm going to apply is I'm going to constrain, I guess I'm going to start with the two axes. So I'm going to click on mate. I'm going to click constraint. And then as far as the type of constraint, I'm going to start with a mate constraint. Click here. And then I'm going to mate. It's almost like the axis of these two cylinders, like the pump cylinder axis, kind of like the center of it. I'm going to make that axis together with the axis. It's kind of like the axis of this of the face right in here. So the center of this one is the way I'm gonna do that one. Okay. So the way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna make sure I click on axis here. I'm sorry, on the mate constraint, and I'm gonna move around here and hover until I find. See, I can move around and can find all these different surfaces. I'm gonna select this surface here to show that axis of the entire cylinder. So I'm gonna select that axis. Click. And then I'm going to select the other axis of the pump cylinder right in here. And I'm going to select this surface right here. Don't click the edges. It needs to be the surface where I can actually see that axis right here in the middle. Select. Once you do that, you should hear like a little sound, I guess, just telling you that it already applied one constraint. And I can continue right now, but I'm going to hit OK just to show you what it did. Okay. Now notice physically, you really can't do that. You can't put one inside of the other physically, but on Inventor, it did. But the thing is, if I move this part around, notice it stays on that axis, but it still revolves around and it moves up and down. Okay. So I don't want to do that. I still want to apply some additional constraints to get it to be right on that surface right here. Okay. And you could probably do it, visibly, and it looks pretty good. But once you zoom in there, it won't be. There's going to be a little gap, and you can keep moving it back and forth. But it's just not going to work. Okay. So I'm going to move this guy up a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply another constraint, and then now I'm going to mate, not axis, but I'm going to go over here and mate. I'm going to select this surface here. I'm going to mate this surface. Click. And then I'm going to revolve the object around to mate it with this surface right here. Click. There we go. Once you do that, you'll notice it mated those two surfaces. So we have the two axes and those two surfaces. So what's going to be happening now? It's still going to be spinning around. Okay. So that's the one last thing. I can't move it up and down anymore. I can't move it to the side, but it's still spinning around. And that's not what I wanted to do. So I want to do one other constraint to get it to work. Okay. So let me show you the wrong way of how to do this. The wrong way would be, because somebody can tell me, well, Mr., don't these holes align? Can I get this hole to align with the other one and just make those two holes the centers? Yes, you can. You can do that. But I will tell you that's not the best way. But yeah, I can go in here, constrain, and I can constrain this cylinder axis together with the drill hole down here and mate those two axes and get it to work. Okay, that would work. And it would keep it from spinning around, and that's pretty much it. And you notice everything would be looking pretty good. Okay. But I will tell you that is not the best solution in this case. That is not the best solution. It goes back to how the parts were done to begin with. Okay. So let me go to show you that mate that I just created. So I go over here to the pump cylinder and pump cylinder head. If I expand them, you notice I have all these mates: mate one, mate two, three, four, and five. The four and the five are the ones that are added right now. And if you notice, if I go to pump cylinder and I expand that one, you'll see also mate four and five. So it's the same one because it's the one where it mates pump cylinder to pump cylinder head four and five. Okay. I'm going to keep the four, but I don't want the five one. I'm going to right click and delete the five. Okay. So I'm going to have it spinning around. Now, the better way of doing this is using geometry to constrain it. The better way to do it would be to do a constraint, okay? And in this case, not a mate constraint. I will tell you, you can pretty much do everything with a mate constraint, but if you are doing the assembly with all mates, you're doing it wrong. You should be using some of these other constraints that I'm about to demonstrate. For example, the angular constraint. I haven't really used the tangent constraint too much, but I have used the insert constraint a lot, and we're going to use it here in a little bit. But for the most part, you should be using some of these other constraints also. Even though I'll tell you right now, I could mate everything, but that is not the correct way. That's kind of the lazy way. It's the wrong way. Okay. You really should try to find the best type of constraint to apply. In this case, I want to kind of constrain the angle between the two. I want the angle to between the two really to be at zero. So I'm going to go click constraint and I'm going to change over to the angular constraint. Okay. So then what am I going to constrain between the pump cylinder and the pump cylinder head? What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the pump cylinder and I'm going to expand origin and look at these geometric planes that were done within the pump cylinder when the part was originally created. Okay. So the one that I'm going to use is going to be the YZ plane of the pump cylinder is what I'm going to mate together with the pump cylinder. I'm going to expand the origin, the YZ plane of the pump cylinder head. You notice they're not at the same angle right now. If I select them, those two are two different angles, but it's because the solution is looking for a third solution. So I'm going to change the solution over to a directed angle. What angle? 0 degrees. Click that one. And then it aligns those two geometric planes at an angle of 0 and hit OK. And if you notice, it's not a mate constraint anymore, it's an angular constraint. That is the more correct way of constraining that pump cylinder head so it doesn't spin around. Okay. All right. So we're pretty much done with the pump cylinder head. So let's start working with some of these other ones. But to get to those, I need to look in here somehow because I need to put that spring here in the middle somehow. And of course, it's kind of hard to see because there's this pump cylinder head in the way. So I'm going to hit F6. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the pump cylinder head over here, and I'm going to right click, and I'm just going to turn off the visibility temporarily. I'm just going to turn it off so I can just kind of work with everything here. I'm going to minimize these. You're going to have to, but just to show you, it's kind of ghosted out because it's been just turned off the visibility, but it's still there. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to work on is the spring. I want to put the spring here in the center like this, and I'm going to go back to constraint. And I want to constrain the I guess what I'm going to start with first, it's this surface right in here. This surface right in here is what I want to constrain to the bottom part of the spring. Somewhere down in here is what I want to constrain it to. So I want to get that surface to be constrained over here. So I'm going to start with that because right now the spring is pretty much floating around. It's just over the place, and I want it to be right on the surface right in here. So I'm going to go to constraint, and I'm going to constrain. I'm going to do a make constraint of this surface right here. This surface right in here, click to the bottom of the spring. Unfortunately, I can't find a flat surface on a spring graphically that I can pick on. Yes, I go find the edge of the spring here, but that's not where I want to constrain. I want it to be to the bottom of the spring. So once again, it goes back to how the geometry was done. So I'm going to constrain this surface, and I'm going to expand the pump spring and look for a geometric plane. that I can use, and it looks like it's going to be the XZ plane. Click that one. Notice it's upside down, so you just simply change the solution while I'm doing that one and flip it to the correct solution. Hit OK. So that's one constraint there. Got it. And if you flip it around, notice it's staying pretty much at that geometric plane. I can't move it up and down anymore, but it does move side to side. So the other thing I need to do is I need to constrain, and I'm going to constrain now the axis of the, I guess it's called the pump pin, I guess. I'm going to, this axis here to the axis of the spring. Once again, I can't find it here, so I'm going to go back to the pump spring. Hopefully one of these axes was the one I can use. Looks like it's going to be the Z axis. And hit OK. Perfect. Okay. Now this thing spins around, and that's actually not an issue. I'm going to leave it alone. If it spins around, it's really not that big of a deal. So I'm going to leave that alone. So then the next thing I want to do is I want to now place the pump washer here. I want to place the pump washer. Let me zoom in here a little bit more. And what I want to do is it's kind of like mating this surface, but it's not. So don't do it yet. This surface, and I'm going to flip it around and mate it to this surface here. Okay, so I'd have to flip it. Okay, and I will tell you I could probably do it with two mate constraints, but I'm not. The way I'm going to do it this time is I'm going to use a constraint, but I'm not going to use a mate or angular. I'm going to use an insert constraint. So I'm going to insert, okay, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to insert this surface at this edge right in here. You can kind of see the arrow on the axis, this one right in here, and then I'm going to mate it to this edge right in here. Actually, I think either one of these would work. So I'm going to pick this one right here. And you notice by picking this edge right in here, it's actually also going to flip it. So it flipped it and it placed it and it aligned the axis and everything. And if you notice, if it's in the wrong side, I can just simply adjust the solution and hit OK. And there you go. So you notice I did all of that with one simple insert constraint. Let's see, pump washer B, was it? No. Yeah, sorry, pump washer B. Yeah, so there's that insert constraint right in there. Okay, so I did it all with one insert constraint. And then I'm going to go ahead and insert the pump nut from this edge again. Let me do an insert constraint from this edge right in here over to this edge right here, because it's going to be at this surface, not at the bottom surface. It's going to be at this top surface. So I'm going to select that one right here, and it places it, and I hit OK. And that is how you assemble. Okay. I'm going to turn back the visibility of the pump cylinder head, and that's how we're able to assemble. Okay. Now, one other little thing that we can do, it's kind of animation, but it's really not, is that I can actually drive these constraints. Okay. So for example, if I go to the pump cylinder, remember that angular constraint that we had of 0 degrees, I can go in here, right click under angle and drive the constraint. And I can drive it right now, and it defaults to 0 to 10 degrees. So if I were to just simply right click and drive, and I just hit the little play button, it's going to go 0 to 10 degrees. But I can change it from 0 to 180 degrees and play that guy. Notice how it's going kind of slow. So if I expand this part right in here, because it's going in every 1 degree increment. So from 0 to 180, let's say I would go in 5 degree increments. And I press play, notice it goes a lot faster. Okay. I can also go and repeat it maybe 3 times. Change that to 3 and play. And it does 3 times, but it goes from start to end, then it starts back at start. So if I click start and press play, it goes back and forth. Okay. So that's kind of cool that you're able to drive these things. Another one that I can do is I could probably go to this mate constraint. And that one I can right click and drive that constraint. That's the one that we put the space between there of 0. And same thing, I can drive that one and go from 0 to, I don't know, maybe 75 millimeters and play it back and forth. Okay. And then I can go back in here and do it every 5 millimeters and repeat it, I don't know, maybe 7 times. Start and start, press play, and it just goes back and forth 7 times. Might be a little bit too fast, but the other thing too that you can do is you can actually record this. Because if somebody doesn't have Inventor, they can't see this movement. So what you could do is you click here and record, and then it's going to make a video. I'm just going to save it on documents, and I'll just call it test or something. And then save, and then you can adjust some of these settings and a better resolution and all that. You can adjust those on your own, and then hit OK. And then once I press play, it's going to make a video. So right now you can see the video, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over to my documents folder right in here, and then under documents, look for that test, double click, and now you have a very bad resolution video, but it's still a video that you can send to your friends or play on your phone or whatever, and it's just a video of that drive constraint. Okay. Nonetheless, that is how we assemble things in Inventor.